Ma'am.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Respected Director, Dr. Faiz Abbasi, UGC Malagwa Mission Teacher Training Center, AMU Aligarh, dear participant, teachers, faculty members, honorable resource person, a very good afternoon to one and all present and attending the program. This is very auspicious occasion for the center, and you are very lucky to be part of that, and we are also very lucky to invite you in this program. National Education Policy 2020 presents a watershed moment in the Indian education policy ecosystem, redesigning the higher education ecosystem as envisaged by NEP 2020 requires strengthening the role of the faculty members. NEP 2020 also envisions the pedagogy becomes learner-centered with mechanisms for continuous comprehensive evaluation and assessment of learners. NEP orientation and sensitization program entrusted to the Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya National Mission on Teachers and Teaching, AMU Aligarh, is aimed at improving the quality of education at all levels, developing innovative teaching methods, imparting pedagogy-related teaching, and in ensuring holistic development of teachers and learners with inculcating of ethics and human values ancient in Indian culture. The key themes identified for the purpose of delivering the program are holistic and multidisciplinary education, Indian knowledge system, academic leadership, governance and management, higher education and society, research and development, skill development, student diversity, and inclusive education, and information and communication technology. There are many benefits of attending the program. That is UGC approved online program, no registration fee, fulfill the requirements of CAS of CAS of UGC, and most importantly, no duty leave required from your institution, no relieving order required, and only you need to submit the NOC, no objection certificate from the head of the institution. And you will be immensely benefited by the delivery of sessions to be taken by the experts from various central universities and higher educational institutions. And the class timing would be 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. That is after your office hour. The UGC MMTTC AMU Aligarh is regularly conducting the training program under these various themes. For the particular program, the MMTTC has collaborated with Aligarh Muslim University Center, Murshidabad, West Bengal. We are very much thankful to you, ma'am, the director, Dr. Faiz Abbasi, for giving us the opportunity to jointly organize the program. I hope that the participants of the program will have an enriching experience over the course of the program. It will help them in identifying the areas of improvement and will add up the knowledge base. I am thankful to you all, the participants, for choosing AMU Center Murshidabad and AMU Aligarh, and for those who we are attending, we are organizing the program jointly. And I wish you all the very best for the program. I hope that our association will continue in future also. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all participants.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dekabanan. I must put on record my deep sense of appreciation for your forthcomingness and initiative-taking ability in your leadership and for leading the AMU Center out there in Murshidabad. We are very glad we are able to collaborate with you, and I can see lots of participants that have come through your network. As you have very rightly put, in this course on NEP, there are various themes: higher education and society, and skill development, academic leadership, etc. And on one of the themes today, a very, very eminent resource person, Professor Singh, will be speaking. He has been our very own faculty, distinguished professor of the Department of Physics for a very long time. Post his superannuation also, I admire him a lot because he has not hung his boots, and he comes across as a very dependable, resourceful academician, scientist, and academic leader for us. He has also been the Vice Chancellor at the HNB Garhwal University in Uttarakhand. Actually, he deserves to be a chief guest or a valedictory guest, but it is his humility that he enjoys teaching. He's still dedicated to knowledge transfer and to serving the cause of knowledge, research, and community service in the area of higher education. My dear participants, I can see 33 of us here. I'm sure in a short while some more will be joining us. Welcome to our platform here at the UGC MMTTC Aligarh Muslim University, a very high-ranking university of the country, always figures in the top 10, a university that is known for its tradition, for its very specific culture, but a university which has also kept pace with time. Founded by the visionary Sir Syed Ahmad Khan for the people of India. This university has been keeping pace with times, marching ahead right from 1875. Our founding institution was founded then. And today we are in all the modern disciplines. You can see Professor S.K. Singh is from physics. His department, physics department, has also been a part of the team of researchers that were experimenting on the Big Hadron Collider in we all know Switzerland, that they were researching the God's particle. I don't know anything more than that about it, but it was a very, very talked about event at that time. So we are into nanotechnology, we are into biotechnology, we have started Green Campus, various MTechs. All this happens because of some good research. So he's here to talk to you about that. His very, very valuable presentation will be made just now. Also, my dear participants, let me enumerate just a couple of things for you. One is that today you will be appearing for an MCQ. That will be your first MCQ. From tomorrow, you will continue to attend these classes. You are requested to come on time. You are requested to be regular. If possible, please keep your videos on and make these interactive sessions, ask questions, participate in discussions. Your comments are very, very valuable for us. Also, on the last day, there will be your final MCQ. Your certificates will be issued only when all the both the two MCQs have been successfully completed by you. In the meanwhile, we will also circulate amongst you a draft certificate. Draft means there will be no grade on it. Draft means that it is not final. It is for you to see the name of your spelling, the affiliation, whatever. And if all that is correct, then your certificate will be issued. I will not keep you longer from the eminent resource person who's here. I will not take long. It should be you and Professor S.K. Singh. And once again, sir, I'm very grateful to you for your time. And once again, Dr. Nigamanand Biswas, the AMU Center, Malappuram, Murshidabad director, must be sitting there in that beautiful, beautiful campus on the banks of the Farakka Barrage. I remember is very close there, and it's a lovely campus. I remember great food there, open environs there. And from there, they're doing great service for knowledge, for education, for higher education. So it's over to you, Dr. Nigamanand, and it's over to our very eminent resource person, Professor S.K. Singh, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Faiza Abbasi, very much for introduction. I would like to welcome all the participants and the directors of Center Murshidabad. This session, as it is announced, it is on interconnectivity of the teaching and research. And as the director of Murshidabad Center pointed out, that the NEP 2020 is expected to bring paradigm change in the higher education scenario of our country. And most important component of implementing NEP 2020 are the teachers, especially the younger teachers who are going to be in this profession for next 30 to 40 years, depending upon whether you have joined now or 5 or 10 years back. So I think on your shoulder lies the responsibility of implementing this NEP 2020 and seeing that this is successfully implemented in all its aspects, which is already described by our director. And as a teacher or as an assistant professor, whatever your designation is, either in a college or in the university system, you are responsible mainly for teaching. But research has become a almost a mandatory part of your teaching duties. So it is nowhere mentioned that you have to do research. But you might have experienced in your recruitment procedure, whether it is the Higher Education Commission or through the university, that in your interviews, most of the questions are asked about your research. What research you have done, what is the impact of your research, what is your planning of your research, and very few questions are asked about your teaching. Obviously, if you are a new entrant and don't have much teaching experience, sometimes it is asked how will be, what courses you will be teaching in undergraduate, what courses will be teaching in postgraduate, what is your favorite subject, and if you mention some subjects, they probably might ask you to give a 5-minute or 10-minute presentation, but that is very rare because so many candidates are being interviewed at a time that not more than 10 to 15 minutes are devoted to the interview, and such a demonstration is not possible of your teaching abilities. So mostly the questions are asked about your research abilities as a research student, a PhD student, or as a guide if you are already employed for a few years and you are engaged in guiding research. Number of research students you have, number of problems you are engaged in doing research, so on and so forth. So you see that even though it's nowhere mentioned explicitly, other than some research experience, your recruitment and again your career graph, your promotions, they are all very heavily biased in favor of the research and not in so much in the favor of your teaching. Teaching is almost taken for granted that you are a good teacher. You are teaching your classes regularly. In fact, there is no monitoring also of your teaching. Maybe some institutions, some heads of department, and some principals do monitoring, but it's not very sincere monitoring. It is not done monitoring as it is done in a primary school or in a higher secondary school. In a university system, you are supposed to be a very responsible teacher and you are supposed to take your teaching duties very seriously and regularly. So there is no monitoring done in a serious way. But research is monitored at various levels. Research is monitored at the level of number of students you take, number of PhDs you produce, number of papers you publish, the quality of the paper, the number of conferences you attend, number of symposia you attend, the number of conferences you organize, your own department, so on and so forth. And similarly for the institution also. So you see that research has become an integral part of our higher educational institutions, and I think it is proposed in the National Education Policy 2020 that this will be percolated to the lower levels of even undergraduate education. If you see the syllabi which has been proposed by many universities, including Aligarh Muslim University or Delhi University or Allahabad University, so you see that research has been brought down to the BSc honors level. You probably know that now we have proposed and implemented in many universities a 4-year undergraduate program in a 4-year undergraduate program, the 4th year can be done by research or by teaching both. So you can have a undergraduate degree of BSc honors purely on the basis of research in the 4th year. That is the last 2 semesters of the undergraduate course. So the research has not only being done now at PhD level or master's level, but research has percolated to the undergraduate level as well. So you are expected to do research work right from the beginning if you have aptitude to do it and if you have uh, resources to do it in your institutions. Uh, so in colleges it may not be possible, but in the universities, well-endowed university like Central University, possible to engage the undergraduate students in some kind of research in the form of a project, because these institutions have well-equipped library where they have well-equipped laboratory. And also, they have quite a few uh, very qualified research guides who normally enjoy taking undergraduate classes, who enjoy guiding undergraduate research and undergraduate projects, and they will be willing to do this research work for the undergraduate students. It is just picking up right now, and hopefully it will be a norm of undergraduate teaching to include projects having some research problem from which some output can come and some publications can be achieved through students' work in very, very reputed journals. But this is all for the future. Of course, there is an inherent danger in this procedure that teaching may suffer while engaging too many people and too many resources in the research. Uh, so there is this danger of research being more paying profession for teachers, that most of you or most of us are tempted to do research, but it should not be at the cost of teaching. Um, I have myself been associated with teaching and research for the last 50 years, but I have never neglected my teaching, whether it is at an undergraduate level or postgraduate level. It is seen that some people who are very active in research neglect teaching, in a sense that they do not like to teach undergraduate classes. They do not like to teach anything other than their research work, what they are doing, what we call or used to call special papers. So they would teach only the special paper in which they specialize, and they will think it is below standard to teach any undergraduate class um, at the BSc first year level or BSc first semester or BA first semester level. So that should not happen, because the emphasis on research should not dilute teaching. But this is a very real danger, and especially in last few years after this ranking has come up, whether it's a NAC ranking or it is NIRF ranking or it is international rankings like Times Higher Education or Cochrane or other. So in search of better grades in these rankings, uh, which by and far are favored for research, people are tending to neglect their teaching. So in that sense, the choice of the subject of interconnectivity of teaching and research as a topic of presentation to the teachers who are attending any program of NAP is very topical and is very important. How important it is, we already know, as I said in the beginning, that you might have already experienced in your short career of teaching and research, that even though the teaching and research should go in hand, the relationship is completely lopsided in the favor of research. Uh, since you are basically a teacher, you should never lose track of teaching, and for that purpose, I would like to say a few words about teaching and research and the interconnectivity between them. Of course, in order to prove that there exists any connection between teaching and research, um, we already know that there is a relationship between them. There's a relationship, there is a connection between them, but can be quantified. Can be quantified by giving a number, a mathematical number, um, or it is not possible to define mathematically or statistically a relationship between um, teaching and research. Or what I mean that to define a relationship, one has to be scientific and one has to be very precise, saying that there is a relationship, there is a good relationship, there is a good connection, or there is a bad connection is not enough. If you are familiar with mathematics or statistical methods, you know that how there are many ways to correlate to attributes. This is taught in psychology, it is taught in economics. Of course, it is always taught in science subjects like physics, mathematics, or statistics, or chemistry, but it is also taught in many subjects in humanities. So if you want to make it a very concrete statement about the interconnectivity and relationship between teaching and research, you must have a scientific way to connect them. I will come to that later. But in the beginning, we will discuss about the qualitative features of teaching and research and how it has evolved along with the higher education system in our country as well as in other countries. You know that higher education, or in fact, the education itself, is the most experimented topic or most experimented subject in our country. Right from the times the education system was started. Of course, the education system in every country has gone through major changes, whether be it in Europe or be it in America or China or Japan, and is still going through the system. In fact, it might surprise you to know that Americans are not very happy with their own higher education system, and they tend to feel that the Oriental system of education or higher education, either in China, Japan, and India, are far better than the European system. On the other hand, we in our country feel that the Western system is very advanced and that is more advantageous, more efficient, and we should really try to change our system to be like the European system. In fact, many of you who are familiar with the American system or European system uh, would recognize that our own NEP 2020 has many aspects of American system really literally copied from them. Like the 4-year undergraduate program itself is a sort of almost very similar to what we have in America. Um, uh, Provided we have a similar system at lower level also, uh, like our higher secondary system and uh, primary system. In fact, the new education, the National Education Policy 2020 also has completely changed the structure of the primary education and secondary education. Uh, and that is why this our 10+2 system has been completely now changed. So what I'm trying to say that thinking that American system is very good, our NEP has copied many aspects of the American system. But on the other hand, Americans and Europeans feel that their system is not efficient enough, and uh, the system of China and India are better. One obvious reason for this is you see that most of the developments in Americas are most of the good universities are headed by Indians, or many of the very good companies in America are headed by the Indians, especially the Indians who have been educated here in our country and gone to United States. You might be reading every day in newspapers that companies like Adobe, companies like Google, companies like Microsoft, companies like IBM, all are headed by the Indian engineers and scientists for basic training up to a graduate level, like BTech has been done in India. They have gone there. So obviously they feel that there is something better in Indian system of education, which is producing all these intelligent people who are really taking the lead over the American system. Uh, so it is really the evolution of the higher education system, which has been similar. And as I said in the beginning, that our education system has gone many topsy and turvy changes over the last 2000 years. Um, but basically, our system follows the Western system, not exactly what is done in Europe, but mostly it is based on the higher system of higher education, which was proposed by Macaulay during the East India Company, that is around 1850-57. So the first part of my presentation, for my lecture, I will give you the historical development of teaching and research in our universities, in Indian universities, as well as in Western universities, and how it has evolved in Western countries, how it has evolved, how it has come to our country, and how it has changed through various periods of our existence in India, and what changes have taken place after the independence. That will be the first part of my presentation. In the second part of my presentation, I will be giving you come to the real topic of interconnectivity with teaching and research, how to establish a connection between this, and what are the efforts which have been made to study this connection, and what are the results, and what should we do to research or to study in a better way the relationship between the teaching and research in our country. As I said, it affects you directly, and it is not something very new, because you are already teaching, you are already doing research, so you have your own personal experiences about this subject. So subject is not something new which I will be presenting to you. Every one of you has your own experience about the relationship between teaching and research. Uh, uh, whether you are a teacher or an administrator, you have seen the evidence of teaching and research in your institutions in which you are serving. You might have seen the relationship between teaching and research in the institutions in which you have already studied, whether you are in, especially the institutions in which you have done your research work in your PhD. You must have seen the behavior of your guide as far as students are concerned, as far as administrators are concerned, as far as funding agencies are concerned. If you have done your PhD, you must have seen these things very, very closely. So you all have some opinion about this teaching and research. But my aim and objective will be to present this situation in a temporal way, in a time development, how it has happened, and where it is going. As I said probably many times in my presentation, that our system of higher education has gone most changes as compared to the European system, because of the obvious reasons that first we have our own system, which was really based on the Vedic system, where we had the Gurukul system of education, which was based on the personality based. There used to be a guru and he would teach what he knew. So it was not an inclusive system of education, but it was personality based education, and probably there was no scope of research in those days. Then it was taken over by the Buddhist tradition, in which we had the great universities of Nalanda and Takshila, and many other universities in other parts of the India, which is today what Bihar or Orissa or Andhra. Other than Nalanda University, we had many. We had this Takshila University and the other, which are now in Pakistan, and many other universities around that time. And you have heard in last few months when Nalanda University was re-inaugurated or inaugurated by our Prime Minister. You must have read in papers many details about the Nalanda University, the things it was taught there, the people who, the professors or the gurus who were at Nalanda, or at the many visitors who came to Nalanda from all parts of the world. Well, not all parts of the world, but especially from Arab countries and from Southeast Asia, from China, and uh, from other Buddhist country who visited Takshila and Nalanda and did teaching and research there. Many of the writings of those visitors are available now, especially from Arab visitors and from Chinese visitors. So we knew that we had a tradition of teaching and research at Takshila and Nalanda almost more than 2000 years ago. But that was, as you also know, that was destroyed very soon after Islamic invaders came to India. And of course, most of it was destroyed, but the tradition remained. But in addition, many things of Islamic education were imposed on our education system. In fact, in those days, the Islamic system of education as practiced in Arab countries was also very advanced. It was as much advanced as our own system. Um, so it was comparable to the Arab way of doing teaching and research. That was the time. About that time, around 12th century or so, that is where the sort of higher education were started in Europe. What was common between the higher education system in the Western countries or in Arab countries or in our countries was that all these were mainly based on education. And what is the meaning of religious education? That the teaching of religion and the religious jurisprudence, the law, was the most important thing, because you have to uh, live in a society, you live in society. So how to live in a society? Religion was a very important role played by religion, either in Islam or in Christianity. I will not go into that. Probably if you are a student of history, you know that Christianity almost ruled the whole Europe, and the Islamists ruled the Arab countries, and uh, as much as the Christianity ruled the Europe. Though this was not so strong in our own country, where we had the Vedic Brahmanic system, which was really taken over by the Buddhist system. But we had the university system where higher education was imparted through teaching and research. But research, as I said, was very limited to doing some work in astronomy or mathematics or logics and uh, and grammar and etc. And some research work was started in medicine also. That was under influence of the Arab situation. So that was the time around 12th or 15th century when our higher education system was a mixture of the Buddhist tradition, the Hindu tradition, as well as the Islamic tradition. Major changes were taken place when the East India Company started ruling us as a ruler, and they faced some difficulties. The difficulties they became aware of after the War of Independence of 1857, and they realized that they cannot rule the Indian people unless they create a class of people who can be used to rule over India. They cannot rule, so they wanted to create a class, a ruling class, through which they will rule the Indian people. And for that, they wanted to create a sort of class which is Indian but thinks uh, like them. That's why they started some universities where main aim was to create such people who through whom they can rule the country. So the basic aim of the higher education institution, the higher education was to create knowledge, to disseminate knowledge, and to teach knowledge to everybody in the nation. That was not the aim and objective of the East India Company people for opening new universities in India. So even though in 1857 the four great universities of today, like the Delhi University or Calcutta University, Bombay University, and Madras University, they were open in 1857. Not Delhi University, but Calcutta University, Bombay University, and Madras University. They were opened in 1857. But the aim and objective was not creation of knowledge, or was not dissemination of knowledge, or teaching of knowledge, like it was already being done in their own country at Oxford and Cambridge. That is why these universities were not opened on the pattern of Oxford and Cambridge, but they were mainly the teaching universities, where even the teaching was limited to very few subjects. And emphasis, there was no emphasis on creation of knowledge. This was in great contrast with the universities in Europe and England. England, you see, is not considered to be Europe. It's supposed to be an island country. So in Europe, by that, I mean Italy and France and Germany, mainly. Germany was a greater part. It's not the Germany of today. Germany of that time was almost considering the Poland and Austria and part of Russia and Germany and part of Italy. This was part of German culture. So the aim and objective there was to create knowledge. And there were two streams there. One stream was started by Newman. He was a priest in England, and he expanded or expanded the religious education to include the liberal and arts education, the liberal arts and fine arts in the universities in England. In addition to the religious studies and religious jurisprudence. The other school was led by Wilhelm von Humboldt in Germany, who himself was a philosopher and a scientist and a researcher. He advocated that research should be an integral part of the university system, because you don't have to really teach what is knowledge is existing. You don't have to disseminate knowledge, but you also have to create knowledge. So the tradition of research was started by von Humboldt in 17th century at the end of 17th and beginning of 18th century in Europe. And that is the reason why Europe dominated why Germany dominated the European system of education. And not only that, the Germans dominated the first industrial revolution and the industrial revolution as such in Europe. And Germany was leader in industries and in creating knowledge, and that was the reason for the dominance of Germany in the First World War as well as Second World War. Obviously, that model was later on followed by Americans, and that is why they dominate us, our higher education system now. And that was again copied in England, where the universities started also doing research. So really the tradition of research and teaching together started really around the 1800 something in Europe, in Germany, and then spread to other countries, like to other universities in England, in Oxford and Cambridge. But sorry about that. Okay. So, but in contrast to those systems, in India, the universities were started just for creating clerks, creating babus, with which the East India Company uh, can spread its rule in the Indian people. In fact, after 1857 War of Independence, the East India Company also realized that it is not possible for them to rule India and rule the Indian people, and they handed over the whole system of governance to the British Parliament, to the British government, and that was beginning of the British Raj. The British Raj really concentrated on creating, as I said, this class of people uh, which were Indians, born Indians, but their thinking was like English people, like British people. Uh, in fact, these principles are very are written in great detail and discussed in the working paper of Macaulay. Um, uh, in the time of Governor Hastings, who accepted the recommendations, our education system is therefore based on the Macaulay's recommendation, and that is why it is called Macaulay's system of education. Uh, but these universities, which were started by the British people, uh, were universities in a true sense that even though there was no component of research, there were people in the teaching fraternity, in the faculty, who were doing some research on their own, because human mind is a very fertile, and a lot of imagination comes to the people who are intelligent enough. So they were doing some research on their own. So saying that there was no research is not true. There was research, it was minimal. But there was no government support. There was no support from the institution for doing research. So what research was done those days was really voluntary and was based on the personal resources of the faculty. Similarly, seeing this emphasis on English education and the creation of babus, many private institutions run by Muslims and Hindus, they started their own institutions. So that was obviously looking at the system of education which was started in these institutions, which were created by the British people. So they were not happy, so they started their own institutions. So there were three types of institutions. One, the government institution, which was started by the British Raj. Then there were Hindu organizations, there were Muslim organizations, which had started their own institutions. But again, there was emphasis was on their Islamic education in Muslim education institutions, the Hindu traditions in the Hindu institutions. But there was no such classification between teaching and research. The emphasis was classified differently uh, to maintain their own culture and traditions in these institutions. So basically, they were teaching universities, and some research component was there. This was being practiced for almost 100 years, 150 years during the British Raj. Of course, the British people spent great great efforts towards women's education, towards primary education, towards secondary education. They did a lot of things uh, uh, towards education at each and every level. And you see, most of our primary education or higher secondary education, the pattern is based on what was started by the British people. Uh, Now, of course, things are a little bit changing. So you see that, and the higher education system also. But of course, depending upon their needs, they also have started some engineering institutions, some medical institutions, some agricultural institutions, uh, because they needed people in each field. So they started all these institutions, which you see today exists. Many are existing. Many of them are existing from the British Raj period. But their emphasis was just creating graduates, just creating graduates, not the creation of knowledge. Or that's why the tradition of creating knowledge is missing from our institutions, and that shows in the lack of Nobel Prizes or lack of international prizes won by the Indian scientists. In fact, in today's newspapers, there is a write-up, especially in Indian Express, which says that why India is lacking in Nobel Prizes in science. It is a very good article. You should read that. Uh, so the tradition of doing original research, which would lead to some invention or some discovery, was lacking because of our education system. Our education system was not geared to that. The aims and objectives were not that. As I said, based on very few researchers, research workers who were doing. So the relationship, the question of interconnectivity in teaching and research did not arise during that period. What happened after independence? I will not go into detail of the dynamics of evolution of teaching and research and the relationship in the British period. But I'll come directly what happened after independence. After independence, many institutions were opened in the higher education sector, obviously also in primary education sector and higher secondary, but I will not go into that. I will concentrate mainly on the higher education sector. Many institutions were opened in the higher education sector. But after independence, something new happened, because at the time of independence, the literacy rate of India was very poor. So the new government realized that first priority would be to increase the literacy of the people here. So emphasis was put more on primary education and the secondary education to increase the literacy. Obviously, some emphasis was given on the higher education also, but that was not for creation of knowledge, because the higher education was limited to very few areas. A vast section of our society, whether they are a tribal society or they are underprivileged people or women, they were deprived of the education whatsoever. Forget about the higher education. They were deprived of education even at the primary level and secondary level and the higher education level as well. So the priority of the new government was to increase the literacy rate, to make the education, including higher education, inclusive, to make attempts to start colleges and the universities, each and every area of our country, where there were no institutions like Northeast or extreme areas, hill areas or tribal areas. So expansion of education took place, but not with the aim to create knowledge, not with the aim to do research, but with the aim to take the opportunity of higher education to each and every corner of the country, to take the privileges of higher education to each and every section of the society, which was backward in education, or which was where there were no facilities. So even though there was enormous expansion in all sectors, including higher education, but with not much emphasis on the research component. But again, as I said, some research was being done in all these universities, which were established by the faculty at individual level, with whatever resources, academic or financial, were available to them. Of course, there were some foundations, there were some private fundings which was available to these people who showed promise of research. So some research was being done. Of course, it was soon realized by our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, who was very scientific minded, that we must be competent in research, not only in teaching, but also in research. So many research institutions were open in each sector of science sector, like Council of Scientific and Industrial Research was started. Now you know that there are many laboratories, almost more than 30, 35, or even more research laboratories working under Council of Science and Industrial Research. Their research was funded and was strengthened in agriculture sector with the establishment of Indian Council of Agricultural Research, which already existed. Indian Council of Technical Education was already there. It was strengthened. Indian Council of Medical Education was there. The medical education was extended. So research picked up in these areas, in all areas really, science and engineering and medicine and agriculture. And these great IITs were started around in 50s and 60s with the, but the emphasis was on economic development because our country was not only educationally backward, but it was also industrially backward. So these 5-year plans were started with the aim to economic development. So mainly the emphasis was more on applied sciences, or engineering or technology, rather than on creation of knowledge, rather than the fundamental knowledge, rather the fundamental basics. The research in humanities, philosophy, sciences, they suffered because the emphasis was on research, but it was on applied side. They wanted to build more industries, to create engineers, to create technologies, and that because of that, our international standing in research was not up to the mark. So at that time, because of this, two developments took place. First, that since the research was strengthened or was emphasized in these institutions, even though in a certain limited area of applied nature, whether it applied science or applied engineering or applied psychology. So really for application, looking for application. So as I said, the universities, some research was being done, but it was done by the people who were doing on their own. There was no support. So they saw an opportunity of doing research in these institutions where research was heavily funded. Well, heavily not as compared to international standards, but they're compared to the universities. So what happened? Most of the people who were doing research in the university system moved or shifted to these laboratories because there they have more time available for research, there are more money available for research, there are more resources available for research. So whatever research was being done with the university was minimized. Only those people who could not leave the university, who did not wanted to shift from the university for various reasons, which may be family reasons, which may be financial reasons, or whatever, by age reasons, the people, very few people remained in the universities. So we had this strange situation of universities where most of the students are available in the university. You see, the bulk of research in every country is done by the students. By students, I mean the research students after the post-graduation or after the undergraduate education who have done their BA, BSc or MA, MSc who do research. So all the students were available in the universities, but there were no guides. In fact, whatever guides were there, they are shifted to the research institutions which were newly opened in the time of the first 10 years of our new government. So on the other hand, we had these universities with most students with no research guides, no facilities. And on the other hand, we had these research institutions. We had mostly research guides. We had all the time for research. They had all the facilities for research, but there were no students. There were few research scientists who were working in these universities with their own responsibilities. So there was a great dilemma. institutions are one side where there are student population but no researchers. Institutions are the other side where there are researchers but no students. So obviously the relationship between teaching and research was very skewed one in the sense of the statistical interpretation. Very skewed relationship between the teaching and research, not much interconnectivity between the teaching and research. This again was realized very soon, and the first attempt on this was to correct this was made by Kothari, D.S. Kothari. Even government appointed Kothari Commission for Higher Education, that was appointed in 1964, and they pointed out about this dilemma, and they recommended they made many recommendations how to boost research in colleges and the universities all over the country, and it has the desired effect. It has really boosted the research in colleges and the universities. There are many schemes. One of the schemes I remember very well started in 1960s was the COSIP, where the teachers in the colleges were given paid leave for 3 to 5 years. They can go to teachers from the colleges can go to any institution where they can get admission for doing their PhDs, for doing their research. And for whole 5 years, they were supported by the government with the full pay. So many people in the colleges took the opportunities, and they did PhD from very prestigious institutions, central universities, or these research institutions. And after doing their PhD, they came back to colleges and started their research work. And that is how the college research in postgraduate colleges started after the Kothari Commission recommendation made in 1964, was implemented around 1966-67. So the tradition of starting research in colleges was started after that Kothari Commission. And you know that there are many thousands of colleges spread all over the country at that time. Even now, even there are more. So apart from the universities in the state sector or in the central sector, the colleges also started, and the research got some boost. But obviously, not all colleges were competent enough as far as academic resources or as far as infrastructure resources are concerned to provide research especially in sciences. But research in humanities and languages, they picked up in the college level also. So there was a great surge in research activities, and the relationship between the teaching and research really was very good. There are a lot of people in higher education institutions at all the three levels, at colleges, at state universities, at central universities, where it started. Now these days, we know that in 70s, the new system of private universities or deemed universities that were also started. Deemed universities are in the both sector. They are in the private sector as well as in the government sector. That were started because you see there was a problem in the research institutions because research institutions were not entitled to give PhD degree or to give any degree. So but they had great facilities for research. So they were doing a lot of research, lot of good research. But if students join those institutions, their degree was given by some universities. So all these research institutions sort of had to depend on some university where for their degree, for their recognition of their research, because if a student is doing research, he wants some PhD degree or DSc, some degree to show that he has done some research, recognition of the research other than the publication. So this difficulty was faced by these research institutions. And this appreciation was based on geographical regions. For example, one of the best institutions in our country, that is Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, that is in Bombay. So they had to get their research from Bombay University. Or Bhabha Atomic Research Center, one of the centers which has all the resources in the country in certain subjects like nuclear physics, environment physics, and other things like that. Or later development in the space sciences. So all they had to depend on the local universities. To give you another example, the great institution of Himalayan Center for Geology in Dehradun, or Indian Institute of Petroleum in Dehradun, or National Chemical Laboratories in Pune. They were doing great work in research, but for them, degree they had to depend on the local universities, whether be it in Dehradun or be it in Pune or be it in Bombay. And more of it was a long procedure because of the bureaucracy. So because of all these things, deemed university system was started, and many of these institutions were given the status of deemed university, where they can that entitles them to give their degree. Many of these institutions now are also deemed university status, so they don't have to depend on the local university for their degree. So their research scientists, they recruit after post graduation. Those scientists work full time job and they do research, and then they get their degree right from the institutions. So obviously, these sort of deemed universities were started in the government sector. But similarly, there were many institutions which are governed by the private sector, and they were doing very, very good work. So those institutions were also given deemed university status. Well, given means they have to apply for this, they have to qualify for it. There are certain norms of giving the deemed university, so on and so forth. So those deemed universities were started, and they were doing good research, most of them. And then in the late 70s and 80s, the private universities were started because of the great pressure of the students. Of course, the system started with the private colleges, especially in the engineering sector and medicine sector, and then the universities were started. Private universities started. So these days, now we have central universities, we have state universities, we have colleges, we have private colleges, we have deemed universities, we have private universities. All of them are doing teaching and research. Unfortunately, many of the private universities, not much research is being done because basically they are opened with a certain purpose, which is not the creation of knowledge or spread of knowledge, but most of them are really creating some students and really money making machines. In fact, you know that there has been enormous uh, increase in B.Ed colleges, but they have not contributed anything to pedagogical research, like the research being done in our education departments, in the universities, and in the colleges. No research was being done in these B.Ed and M.Ed colleges. In fact, most of them did not even start masters. Forget about the research, because their aims and objective was different. Their aims and objective was just to create the population which can be prepared for teaching in higher secondary education. So you see, there is a lopsided development in the private sector. Private sector, many B.Ed colleges were started, many engineering colleges were started, but they were completely devoid of any research component. So there was no research being done there. So the question of interconnecting the relationship between teaching and research does not exist. Of course, in the last few years, after the NAC has been made mandatory for all the institutions, this has been made mandatory for getting some grants from the University Grants Commission or from other funding agencies. Some other ranking system has started, because now the students choose their institutions based on these rankings. Um, because of all these things, the private institutions have also started doing some research. Some of them are very good. Some of them are almost on the top, like Manipal's system of education, whether it is in science or engineering or medicine, they are still on the top. This university in Coimbatore is also on the top. So now some private universities, some institutions in the private sector are almost competing with the best of the institutions in the government sector, like Hamdard Institute in New Delhi, is in the field of pharmacy. It is one of the leading institutions in the whole country. Similarly, as I said, in the medicine, the Manipal Medical College is one of the best in the country, and that means in teaching as well as in research. So it is picking up now in many other private universities. The research in engineering and sciences is also picking up, but it's not much. So I am describing all these because these are relevant when we ask questions about interconnectivity between teaching and research, and we will see how it becomes important. So that is how the system of higher education developed in our own country. Really, after Kothari Commission, as I said, there was a great improvement in research in all sort of institutions. Then the education policy was formulated at the time of Rajiv Gandhi government, the national policy of education that came around in the 90s. And now in 2020, we have the national education policy, which puts great emphasis on the research. In fact, it has promised 50,000 crore rupees in 5 years to be spent on the research. So it is a great boost on research, which will be available in every type of institutions where there is a competent faculty to do research. In fact, now this national education policy has decided to establish also a National Research Foundation, which is now renamed as the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, ANRF, which has been given this 50,000 crore rupees. The important aspect of this is to spend. In fact, this has three main objectives. First, to boost the financial allocation of the research to the higher education institutions to a great extent. Number one. Number two, spread the scope of the research to the smaller institutions which are working in the state university sector or in the colleges. So it was realized by the government that not much money is available in the state sector or in the private sector institutions for the research. Most of the grants available were taken up by the central universities and IITs and IIMs. So this was felt by the committees appointed for the NEP formulation of NEP 2020, and they made integral part that emphasis should be given to support our research in these institutions. The third is that they are used to take long time in funding of the research. For funding of the research, if you are applying for the government funds, you make an application, and then some review work has been done, and based on the review work, you are supposed to go and present your project, your research project, defend it. This procedure used to take almost more than 2 years, a year and a half or two, to get the funding. We have been victim of this many times because in our career of 35 years of research, 40 years of research, we have undertaken many research projects, and we have gone through this process. And this was made aware to the government agencies that this time should be shortened. So this time is supposed to be shortened to 6 months, that you can get funds, release funds within 6 months of your making application. So these are the three main aims of the funding of research in the NAP 2020. Of course, it has been realized that 50,000 crore rupees allocation for research in the universities is beyond the scope of the government. So they have envisaged that major part, 70% of this will come from the industry. Because it has been often pointed out by many committee members and professors that the Indian industry is not supporting research, is not supporting research in a substantial way. while it is being done in every country, like in France or Italy or Germany or United States of America or England. Most of the research is being done by the industry, and very small amount is spent on the research by the government sectors, especially in the United States. In fact, now this has been so changed that you hear today about artificial intelligence and quantum computing. You hear about everything. The most advanced research is being done by Google, Adobe, and Microsoft, Samsung, Nvidia. These are the companies who are leaders in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, which is the sort of future, or even the biotechnology, biological companies. There are many pharmaceutical companies which are leading research in biotechnology. In fact, you might have realized this during the COVID pandemic, that most of the new vaccines were developed by the pharmaceutical companies. They were not developed by the universities or the research institutions. So you see, of course, there are two ways that industries do support the research. They do research in their own laboratories, or they support research through universities. They give funding to projects which are being run on their money in the universities by various professors. That used to be the case 50 years ago when we were doing our research. In fact, I did my research in the United States of America. At that time, very little research was done by the industries in their own laboratory. Mainly one of those days which were doing research, which were famous, was IBM and General Electric, or some Westinghouse Corporation. There were 3 or 4 companies who were doing most of the research in their own lab. Most of the research was supported by the industry, but the work was being done in the universities and colleges of the Americas. That is shifting now. That is shifting because of the bureaucracy in these universities, because of the other problems in the universities. Now, most of the work is being done by the industry in their own laboratories. Of course, it is expensive for them because every time they hire, they have to establish a new lab. But some of the labs are already established in various universities and colleges, especially in the United States, not in India. So it is easier, it is cheaper and easier to do research, to fund research project in a university where professor is doing the work. But now things are changing. Now things are changing because of they want quick results, because of the competition in various fields. They want, because of secrecy in creating the product and marketing it. So most of the industries is doing the research in their own laboratories. But in Indian system, still we have to start in the original way, that we would like that industries support the universities and colleges for their research projects. In fact, the research projects are for their interest. So that has to be encouraged in NEP 2020, and that is why government is expecting that 70% of the funding will come from the industry and 30% will come from the government. The reason behind thinking is that, after all, it is the industry which is going to benefit by any innovation and by any patenting which has been created in laboratory. Laboratory, you can create something, but to produce it on a commercial basis, to produce on a massive scale so that its benefit can reach every nook and corner of the country, every person in our society, it has to be created on a massive level. And to create at massive level, it can be done only by the industry. The university and colleges can really innovate, can patent something new, but they cannot produce it at a massive scale. So industry has to come forward, and that is why industry should take initiative in creating new products, especially in the pharmaceutical sector, which was brought home after the pandemic. We knew that most of our pharmaceutical companies working in India are producing drugs which were created or which were invented by the others in Europe and United States. Um, and they suffer with the patenting problem, because if they don't give you the patents, you cannot create that. So that was realized in our country after this COVID, that we have to be self-sufficient in pharmaceutical sector. Also, we have to create our own workforce. We have to create our own scientific force in the pharmaceutical sector, where we can create our medicines by ourselves, and we don't have to depend upon the foreign countries. In fact, I see, two of the most popular vaccines which are used in COVID were not invented here. In fact, if fortunately, because of the nature of the pandemic, no constraints were put on those medicines. But if some country where they were invented put on constraint, it would have been impossible for India to obtain those drugs or to manufacture um, uh, those vaccines in India and do the vaccination at such a mass scale. So that's why it is important that industries create their own patents, create their own products, which can be used for the use of masses at a commercial level. So that is one of the reasons that in NAP 2020, the component of research which is emphasized due to the participation of the our own industry. Our own industry is capable of that, and hopefully they will come forward and participate in this endeavor of research, which is proposed by the NAP 2020. So if really happens in the next 10 to 20 years, I think it will be very great, because Indian industry is picking up in all sectors, and in many other sectors it will become as independent as we are already in the field of the nuclear sciences and the field of space sciences. In fact, in the field of nuclear sciences as well as in the field of space sciences, we are self-sufficient, we are independent, we are as competent as any other country. But we hope that with NAP 2020, with the support of research through ANRF, we will be as sufficient, as independent as we are today in the field of nuclear energy as in the space sciences. So hopefully that will take place, and then the industry will pick up industrial research will pick up to a great extent in our universities, and the relationship between teaching and research will be very dense, as it is in United States or Germany. One example of Japan, which is very exemplary for, we should follow that. Unfortunately, it has not been followed. In Japan, the universities are very advanced, because uh, there are very few institutions where research is being done independently of universities. Most of the research institutions of very high quality in Japan are part of the university system. So even those research done in those institutions which are almost independent but a part of a university, the credit goes to the university. That is why the Tokyo University is one of the leading universities in the world. Or many other Japanese universities rank very high in the university ranking system. Same is true in the China also. Many of these institutions are part of the university, but here the tradition has been different. The tradition is different, because if some good research work is being done, people try to take that away from the university. They start their own institute. So that sort of system, sort of the teaching, the research is eroded from the university. If it is made part of the university, then the teaching and research will be very strongly correlated in the higher in the university system or in the college system. So with this part, I will come to the second part. Unfortunately, I have taken more time on this. Normally, I my lectures, I don't spend so much time, but well, that's the way it is. It is almost going to be 5 o'clock. Maybe I have 10 to 15 minutes more. So let me say what is the problem in quantifying the relationship between the research and teaching. I'll be very brief because being a teacher yourself, you know the situation and the problems. You can appreciate it. I don't have to really talk too much about it. Because if you know that in order to quantify the interconnectivity between teaching and research, we have to do some research on the subject of relationship. How we do the research? Uh, the research has to be pedagogic. That we have to define what is a research, what is a good research, what is a good teaching. So for defining good teaching, we have to define certain parameters on which we have to rank. We have to get marks on each parameter. Maybe we can define the 10 to 15 parameters, or 5 parameters, whatever the parameters are. Then we define the parameters which define the good research. And then we must prepare a questionnaire of to be distributed to the stakeholders and take their opinion. This research has to be pedagogically like the research which is being done in education department or in geography department or in medicine department, which is based on sample surveys, not like research in physics and mathematics. It has to be observational. So like the way it's done in medicine, when you ask the response of the various people after you have administered a medicine, or in education, when you have certain system of education you have developed, then you prepare a questionnaire based on the education system and ask various the responses from various stakeholders. So that is how we have to define parameters for good teaching. We have to define parameters of a good research. Then we have to design a questionnaire based on these parameters for research, and then you have to do a sample survey. Sample survey has to include all the stakeholders. What are the stakeholders? The major stakeholders of this research would be students, because the students are the one who decide about good teaching and good research. Of course, about good research, there are other stakeholders which are equally important, though not so important in the case of teaching. That is about your employers, maybe your principals or vice chancellor, who can rate your teaching or your research. And then there will be your colleagues who can give opinion, or who can answer this questionnaire based on your teaching or based on your research. Then there will be the government agency or the funding agencies which are giving the money for supporting research or supporting teaching or supporting the positions. And then there are the publishers who are publishing your research work, publishing your pedagogical teaching. The journals, they can rank based on their viewership, because if you publish a paper in a journal, then how many people are reading this? What is the citation index? So that is depending upon the publisher. So these are the stakeholders which have to be approached for the sample survey. But as I said in the beginning, the main stakeholders are the students. So then you take this questionnaire to these stakeholders. Sample size should be appreciable, and then you get the response. You have to quantify the response, like good or very good, not good. So you have to give marks. For no good you give 0, or for moderately good give 1 point, for good you get 2 points, for very good you get 3 points, 4 points, for excellent you get 5 points, something like that. You mark them, and then you get a score for teaching and for good research, for the same sample survey. And then you use some statistical methods. There are many statistical methods to find a correlation between two variables, X and Y. So one variable with teaching, one variable with the good research. And then you use these statistical statistical methods to find a correlation between these two variables, X and Y, these two variables, teaching and research. And then you find a correlation coefficient, which could be positive, which can be negative, which could be zero, could be positive and large, which could be negative and large. And from there you interpret. So that is the procedure of doing research for finding the interconnectivity between teaching and research. As I said in the beginning, just saying that it is good or it's bad or it's okay is not enough. You have to really quantify, say that there is a correlation between this correlation is large, this correlation is small, or this correlation, there is no correlation between teaching and research. Of course, it is very difficult to do because of the reasons which you already know better than myself, that there are no criteria for defining a good teaching. How do you define a good teacher? Of course, there is no foolproof criteria, but something can be said. Some parameters can be determined, even though they are not foolproof. For example, if a teacher result of the class is very good, everybody gets first class, you say, oh, he's a very good teacher. Well, but that is a good criteria. That is one of the criteria, but it is not the foolproof criteria, because there are many reasons in which a bad teacher can also get a very good result for his class. I will not go into the details. As I said, you know more about that, how a bad teacher can also get a good class result. Similarly, if you say your discipline is good in the class, you are a good teacher. That is, of course, a reasonable criteria, but that also is not a foolproof. So there are many ways to maintain good discipline in the class, even without good teaching, or even with no teaching, with bad teaching. Or you can say if somebody has a very good discipline, comes very much on time, takes class for 1 hour, his class very regularly, he gives homework, he grades them, he does all these things, is good teaching. But again, I mean, these are not foolproof. But something has to be done. Some criteria has to be done. Of course, things are simpler with the research. There are some parameters, well-established parameters, though controversial, to define a good research. For example, if you publish large number of papers, some people think that if you publish large number of papers, you are a good researcher. Again, it is a reliable criteria, but not foolproof. Because then the question comes on the quality. Some people can publish a large number of papers with very bad quality. Some people may publish very good papers but few in number, very good journals. But again, the question is, who decides good journals? Who decides the quality, good paper? Is the citation index criteria? But recently, you see, I think even yesterday I read in papers that the Chinese score very high on citation because they cite more papers in their own journals, Chinese journals. So the number of citations becomes very large. That which is again is a well-known criteria to publicize your work. You publicize your work within your friends, within your community, within your country, or within your society. So you get more citations. But again, the citations where they are. If they are citations in a journal like a Nature, or a journal which is published in your community. So these things have to be really defined more. In fact, being a assistant professor or being a professor in a college or university, you already know that recently, well, 10 years back, the University Grants Commission has prepared a list of good journals, where if you publish in those journals, you will be considered, your publication will be considered of good quality. But that list has been revised so many times, and still some people believe there are a lot of journals in that list which are very badly rated journals. They should not be there. So again, it is a controversial, because it is a subject. There is a committee which has which has prepared that list of journals, and there are subjective judgments which have gone into that. So again, it is, as I said, some way up to criteria, but it's not a foolproof. So that's why I said this is a very difficult subject to do research on. But something can be done. Something is better than nothing, and that has been done. That has been done in many countries like United States, United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, Denmark, and Sweden. This work has been done to study the relationship between the teaching and research, the interconnectivity between research. What is the correlation? This correlation. What is the nature of the correlation? The work has been done, even though the methodology is not foolproof. So that you have to keep in mind. That is a caveat, that the methodology is not foolproof, and still then something has been done. Why it has been done? Of course, one is the basic curiosity to learn the relationship between teaching and research. But in the committee which started this work, or the foundation which started this work in United States, it was very clear objectives they had, because some of the industry people thought that if the relationship, in fact, they thought the relationship would be positive and large, which means good research will lead to good teaching. So if that happens to be so, that was their hypothesis, that the good research will lead with good teaching. If that hypothesis comes out to be true, then they gain two things by supporting the fundamental research. By supporting the research in the universities, they get two benefits. First, that they get research of the top quality done by spending some money. But by spending the same money, they are improving the teaching in the universities and colleges. So they are getting one for free. But the basic aim is to do research, to get some patents, to create some new products for their company, for their industry. But in doing so, they are improving the teaching in the universities and colleges. That is coming for free. That was the reason, because they thought that the hypothesis of good research leads to good teaching is true in the many universities. So that was the main reason of doing research in the advanced countries. But the caveat of pointing out the difficulties in doing the research and the uncertainties which are involved, which I have already presented, the results were surprising. The results were surprising in a sense that result you can guess. The result was that some researchers got a correlation which was positive and large, which means good research leads to good teaching. Some researchers found that it was correlation was negative, which means that good research did not lead to good teaching. Some researchers found that there is no relationship. I mean, the good research does not really create good. It's important. There's no relationship. I mean, the correlation came out to be zero. So all these three type of results were possible, and that you can expect. Because it is very difficult, almost impossible to answer this general question, that what is the relationship between teaching and research? What is the interconnectivity? Is it positive or negative? Of course, everybody has his own feeling. You also have your own feeling, whether the good research leads to good teaching or not. You must have your own feeling. Your colleagues will have your own feeling. I personally feel, with my experience of 50 years of teaching research, that good research will lead to good teaching. I can give arguments, but I don't have time to give the arguments. But I will tell you why the research led to this sort of conclusion, that you can get any result you want. That is because, you see, the relationship between teaching and research first depends upon discipline. If you're talking about medicine, you're talking about science, you're talking about engineering, then you will get a different result. If you're talking about Hindi, social and languages, Hindi, English, or Urdu, or social sciences like sociology, political science, you will get different results. Because in scientific science subjects or in engineering subjects or in medicine, there is a close cooperation, close connection between students and teaching, students and teachers. They meet very, very often. So they know, the students know about the teachers, whether their research activity, they're good researchers or good, bad researchers. So they can relate their teaching with their research. But there is not much interaction between students and teachers in the class of Hindi or class of English. So their interaction is not much between teachers and the students. So students have no opportunity to grade the teacher based on his research activities. First, they don't know about his research activity because there is no interaction. So it is not possible to answer a general question. What is the connectivity between them? Unless you specify the discipline. So it is discipline has to be specified in what discipline you are talking about. Other problem comes whether you're talking about the undergraduate class or postgraduate class. Because in postgraduate class, you have students like 25 students, 30, 40 students, not more than that. So again, the interaction is very close between the two teachers and the students. So your result will be different than in an undergraduate class. In undergraduate class, where the students are 50 or 60 or even 100 sometimes, there is again no interaction between the students and teachers. So your pedagogical research between the relationship between teaching and research will be not based, will not be very realistic because there are no restrictions, no interaction between them. So the students, participants will answer very randomly, not based on the realistic situation. Of course, I am assuming that the major stakeholders are the students and not your colleagues or your employers. So basically, the most survey will consist of the student community, and that is why the result will depend upon what is the status of the education, whether it's undergraduate class or postgraduate class. So depending upon the first discipline, the result answer will be different. It could be positive and large. Depending upon the undergraduate or postgraduate class, the answer could be different. In a postgraduate class, it could be positive. In an undergraduate class, it could be relationship. The correlation coefficient could be zero. So that is the situation in quantifying the relationship between research and teaching. But nevertheless, this has to be done, and I think the good research should lead to good teaching. That is my feeling, and my feeling is because the teaching and research both are activity of a high intellectual activity of a human mind. They are related at intellectual level, and therefore the relationship should be positive because teaching has really two components. That is the the learning of knowledge and disseminating knowledge. You learn something new and then you try to communicate to others, the students, maybe colleagues. While research has all the three components, that is learning as well as disseminating as well as creating knowledge. And all these learning and disseminating and creating, all are the activities of highest class of intellectual activities of highest class of the human mind. So they must be related at some level, and the relationship should be positive. So that's my feeling, that the relationship should be positive. But as I said, not much research has been done. In fact, not much has been done at all in Indian situations, not to my knowledge. And the education departments in various in various universities should take up this work as a pedagogical research about establishing the relationship between teaching and research in various disciplines, at various stages of higher education, like undergraduate and postgraduate. This should be done. But whatever research has been done is not very conclusive, because all three types of results have been available. That the correlation is positive, correlation is negative, or correlation is null. But again, finding a reasonable sample size is also a problem. So there are certain problems associated with doing research in the subject, but it does not mean that it cannot be done. It should be done, and it should be done especially in the context of our own country, because it's very important. Because if the results comes out to be positive and large, then it will be a great boost for the industry to support research in a great way, with a high amount of investment in the universities and colleges, and that will be very good for the future of universities and colleges. I think with this, I will like to close my presentation, and I would like to thank all of you for your attention for last hour and a half during my lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. If there is some discussion, I will like to engage in, but if you are waiting for the next lecture, I will like to close. So if you have any comments or any suggestions or any thoughts, it will be most welcome. Thank you very much.
Participants, anybody wants to ask any question? Dear
Well, it is a subject where not many questions can be asked.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your
Thank you.
nice
Thank you very much.
presentation. Thank you. I hope the participants have immensely benefited from your presentation. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.